maximum hour. In the next minutes, we're going to talk about the government procurement in Singapore and explore some relationship between governmental agency and the different ministries, as well how they handle their suppliers. But before that, let's meet our team. So this is the Charo and Shreya, they're sitting over there. And me, Katrina, I'm going to be our speaker for today. And the agenda will be like this. So first of all, I will make the short introduction, how the procurement works, and what kind of the process involved there. I will move to our motivation, why we actually choose this topic to be selected, provide the short overview of the data to be found, and go to the methodology and our approach for the visualization. The most important, we will have for sure live demonstration of how the application works, and get back to some insights and also limitations and recommendations for the future improvements. So let's go. What is actually the procurement and the government procurement? But that will mean the acquisition of any goods and services to satisfy the public needs. So any kinds of buildings, supporting the events, organizational, IT services comes to the government procurement. In Singapore, that is the responsibility of the Ministry of Finance. And because Singapore is the party of the World Trade Organization, it has to be handled under three main principles of transparency, fair competition, and also value for money. Few words about the procurement process. So 4 stages has to be involved. That is the sourcing, evaluation of the possible supplier, approval, and also the contract management. By default, all the business opportunities has to be announced openly, and so that every supplier can publicly participate and compete for the business opportunities. That's why actually the portal GBs was created to be one-stop shop for everything. So what is GBs? Just to get some historical explanation, back to 1998, Singapore decided to move all his government process online to create this kind of portal when everything will be handled in one place. So already in 2001, 4,000 registered suppliers were there, and the figure even doubled next year. So nowadays, GBs is a place which managed about 10 billion of business opportunities, 10 billion Singapore dollars, and about 30,000 of registered suppliers. So why we're talking about these figures? Because during all of these years, because all of this transaction happening online, the GBs actually accumulates a lot of market value data which can be explored. So getting to this kind of knowledge base, what kind of possible questions we wanted to consider there? So are there any observable trends within the government suppliers? Maybe there is any difference between the ministries or seasonality. Is there any ministries which spend much more than the others, and what kind of interesting points we can find there? Are there any favorite suppliers who get tenders more often than the others, or maybe the agencies who get the tenders from multiple suppliers? And after all, which suppliers are the most influential from the points of number of contracts awarded and the total amount of money given? So, getting these questions into consideration, we set our goal to build interactive explorative visualization of Singapore government procurement to enable to get some answers for the questions listed. And also we wanted to study possibilities of R and explore our packages as the tool for the visual analytics. We wanted to estimate pros and cons of tools we used, and also provide recommendations for possible improvement. So let's shortly overview our data. So the data is open on government data GovSG portal and the Singapore Open Data License, so everyone can access it freely. And it covered like 3 years, starting from the January 2015 until the end of 2017. So it's managed by the Ministry of Finance in Singapore, and overall it has about 18,000 observations and 7 variables. where area abuse abbreviation is equals to 1 tender. Now we go to the methodology. So initial data preparation was pretty straightforward. We added one more variable to have the ministry, which was mapped to the agency, actually managed by this ministry. And we also filtered out the undefined suppliers, where actually no information stated, so you cannot provide any kind of meaningful insights. And this data sets was already used for the future visualization. By planning design framework, we tried to use the principle to start exploration from the higher level and move into details on a deeper level on demand. We tried to choose the visualization techniques which will be able to answer the questions we stated before. Also provide more interactivity, ability to select, manage scales, zoom and filter when on the user need, and also interrelated graphs on dashboard with simultaneous selection. Okay, so the first visualization, just before we move to the live demo, just a few words about how it was built. So the first one on dashboard, we have the time series, and it's handled under the multiple graphs, one graph for every ministry. This is not small multiples, because the scales of the total amount is different for everything, and that was selected consciously as the compromise between its explanation power, because the range will be like really different, like 1,000 times, for example. And the package used there was digraph and HTML tools. So why digraph and HTML tools? To provide interactivity and to be able to organize everything in grid. We also use the tree map to show hierarchy, and at first actually we tried to do this static tree map, but because of too much items inside, it provides very low readability because you cannot understand literally nothing. So we moved to the D3 TreeR package as in addition to the tree map to provide 2 layers interactive tree map. So I need to also mention here that the package D3 TreeR is not available anymore on CRAB, but you still can download and install it using DevTools, similar what we have with GeoHash. We did exploration of the connection between agencies and suppliers using the network visualization. And 2 graphs we used, the static one using iGraph and the interactive one using the VisNetwork package. And it provides the ability to zoom and select, highlight, link, scale, some small layout management as well. We build, to answering the question about is there any tenders with multiple suppliers, we build facet graph based on selection of the ministry and the agency. And actually it do the search of all the tenders which has multiple suppliers and beat one facet for each tenders, where you can hover on and see all the details and awarded sum to this specific supplier. ggplot we used to build the graphs, and the Plotly to provide interactivity and tooltips for the details on demand. For the most influential suppliers, we built a box plot in addition to the scatter plot. And we used the DT and Plotly packages for that. DT because we supply it, as you will see now. DT because we supply it also with a data frame, and Plotly also to provide interactivity and to highlight the same selection within the different graphs. So let's go to our live demonstration. The app is actually available online, so yeah, but connection is there. So So sorry for this technical stuff, it just worked 15 minutes ago. Okay, here it comes. Let's take a few seconds to load. Okay, so it takes a while to be loaded. So we have the time series here on the tab. We have also treatment. So yeah, overall we have the time series tab here, tree map, network and export. So let's go to the time series first. This is our default dashboard. We can access it in the hole right here. And here you have the actually the line graphs for every ministry, which is based on the total amount and the time frame. We can adjust the time over here if we wanted to navigate to any specific point, and on demand to access the total amount within this time frame spent by this ministry. So for example, in March 2015 there was like almost 800,000 spent by the Ministry of Culture, Community and Youth. So overall, what kind of insights we can get from these graphs? So we didn't observe any kind of seasonality. What we did observe is actually the scale is pretty different, because sometimes we have 7 digits figure and sometimes it's 8 digits. And for the Ministry of Social and Family Development, we have crazy amount of tenders over here, which is about 41 billion of Singapore dollars. And we're gonna see this tender on different plots later. Okay. So let's come back, get to our tree map. So tree map is the hierarchical view, and before making a build on our screen, what we do, we need to select the year. By default it's all the 3 years, but if I need to select only 2016 and 17, I'm just make the selection over here. I can select either total amount based, which will be included to the area of this tile, or number of tenders, and show it. Okay, so what do we have here? For example, I know that the Ministry of Education is having the large tile here, but because it's like a light green, then the total amount of tender is not so big. And the Ministry of Social Development is really dark, so it's actually the number of tenders, it's not that big, but the amount is really huge. If I go inside to this Ministry of Social and Family Development, and I can see that the highest amount of tenders was on the Singapore Sports Council, and clicking to it, I will also see actually the distribution of what was the total amount of different kind of tenders. Just let it happen. Okay, here it goes. So, so Ministry of Social and Family Development, now we know that the highest amount of tenders was on the small amount, under 1 million. And if we want to actually get closer look, because this kind of visualization doesn't provide us too much, it's like highly skewed, we can also remove outliers here. And now I can see actually what kind of tenders were awarded overall by the selected agency. let's move to the network. So by default, it builds under the Ministry of Finance, because this is the one who's responsible for the GBs. And we also need to select the date range. Why we do this subsetting? Because actually network is only used, it only provides some meaningful insights when you have limited amount of nodes. If you have too much of nodes to be built, it just creates this the big hair clock, which will you understand on the little information. So let's explore it. So for example, if the Ministry of Finance, I can choose something else like Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the date range will be the same. And I can see my nodes here. So the yellow one is the agency and the blue one is the supplier. And then hover to it, I can see that that was the tenders awarded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I can also can zoom it here and navigate using this network interactivity. And the width of the edge here is mapped to the total amount of tender. It's not directly mapped, it's by the trial and error we use the formula of the square root of the total amount divided by the 100, just to provide some kind of meaningful comparison. I can also select it here to see the total value, and I can do I can do selection of the nodes I'm particularly interested using the drop down over here. For example, if I want to know about the region Singapore, whatever it is, this node will be highlighted. And in addition to this interactive agencies network, I can also select any particular node to see what kind of tenders were awarded there. For example, I don't know, name you any kind of companies you know. Nobody, okay. That will be Fraser Place, Robertson Works, Singapore. And we know that this company got only one tender from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and total amount was $600. For sure, we can ask for more, and we can build multiple tenders here. For example, Amara Singapore got, this is the supplier, and it got 2 tenders from the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And total sum is highlighted over here. Let's navigate to the exploration. We have 2 tabs here inside. One is to show the tenders with the multiple suppliers. I need to select the ministry here. For example, that's going to be the Ministry of Trade and the agency. Okay, I think it needs some time, or maybe there is no tenders inside with the multiple suppliers. Okay, so now I know that the Economic Development Board had at least 7 tenders, so 1 facet equals to 1 tender, was multiple suppliers awarded. On hover here, I know what is the award date. For example, that was in May 2017, and total amount was about 1 million Singapore dollars, and it was awarded to Havas Worldwide Singapore for the 3 years period. And the very same tender was also awarded to a few more suppliers like Hekudu Singapore and Doremus & Company. And to also add the visualization with this top N, we go to our next step. I may select the top N number. By default it's 5. I can make it like 3, for example. These controls is only to adjust your scale. So by default it's from 0 to 5 million. I can click to update. And here some statistics come. So we have the box plot, and we have also the scatter plot here. And I know that our top 1 star supplier is NCS PTE Singapore, following with Surbana, Jurong, and Pico Art International. What I can do here as well, I can select, using the scatter plot, the interested point, see the details on demand, and that will be also highlighted in the table below. So I know exactly what kind of tender was awarded and what is the total amount and the source of the tender. Okay. So actually all of these 3 companies are government-based, so they just moving money like from one pocket to another one. Okay, so if we don't have any questions here, so let's get back to insights and findings. So this is the example of the insight which can be actually got from the dashboard build. So we know that the Ministry of Social and Family Development got the largest tender in all the history for the sports apparel, which is amount to 41 billion of Singapore dollar. And for example, the Ministry of Education has highest total amount of tenders, but they all are small in value. We didn't observe any seasonality or time trend from the tender award point. And we also know that some ministries have high variability in terms of tender, while others do not. We know that any tender may be awarded at the same time to several suppliers, splitting the value equally or not equally. And for example, there are some star suppliers like NCS, which gets at most tenders, which also high in value. What are the lessons learned? So we tried also to compare building dashboards in R to software off the shelf, and what actually the advantages to have to build in R Shiny. So the first advantage is actually R is flexible, and you can control your data flow on every stage. You also have a great choice of custom-made libraries to different kind of visualization. And if you wanted to combine it with like HTML or JavaScripts in build, which we had here, you don't need to have the additional specific knowledge in this kind of other programming languages. What are disadvantages? That first of all, this kind of dashboards require much more effort compared to software off the shelf. Like the same could be built in Tableau much faster. And also, all these multiple packages have their own syntax convention, which requires you to pay attention for all your dots and commas all the time. And sometimes error message also difficult to diagnose. What can we say about limitation and future improvements? So, yeah, we can do the tender categorization based on the values or the type of service provided. We could also improve the performance of the dashboard, because now it works a bit slow. And if it comes to some really complicated diagrams, you really click and wait. We could add a time series chart having the same scale with some also transformed values, but the explanation power will be also dropped, because if you make some additional calculations in your data, you cannot read it just directly from the ground. We could allow more interactivity and simultaneous selection for sure. And as the limitation, we need to state that the network graph is only usable for the small amount of nodes. So, if you have any questions, please.